Your time sharing a rental house or an apartment with a roommate. It's a great way to cut costs, and it's all fine and good until you discover that your roommate is a bum. And then it gets worse when you realize that you both signed the lease. So what can you do? Well, that sounds like a question for our real estate expert, John Adams. John, how you doing today?
I'm great. I'm delighted to be here, but this happens a lot.
So some people actually do it successfully, right? It's possible.
I think the vast majority of roommate situations work out. Those are the ones you don't hear about. It's the ones where people want to pull out midway through for whatever reason. That's where the trouble starts.
Well, let's talk about some of those. What can happen and whatever reason?
Well, as often as not, it's all about money.
Of course.
And you've got a good friend, you agree to move in together, you're going to split 50-50, all expenses, the rent and everything else. It's a great idea. It seems logical. It works fine for a few months, and then your roommate loses her job.
Oh, boy.
Wait a minute. Not only is she not paying her share of the rent, but she's trying to borrow from you. Well, the problem then comes, you send in your half rent check. That's what you've been doing all along. Well, the landlord sends it back and says, we're not going to accept this. We do not accept partial payments, which is a surprise because you thought, well, I paid my half.
Right.
What's the problem here? That's where the problem really starts, because at that point, there's now a late fee due, and either you pay the whole rent or you're going to have to face an eviction or move out or something.
All right, so I want out of this arrangement then. This is a bad deal now, so what can I do?
Well, there's not much. It's unfortunate because if you move out, the landlord is likely going to come seeking a dispossessory against you and the roommate and come after you. If the roommate moves out, they're still responsible. It doesn't make any difference whether they're living there or not. You signed a lease that says you are each and severally responsible for the full rental amount every month. And that clause is in every lease I've ever seen.
All right, so in this example, it seems I have a female roommate.
Yes, you do.
So do I have an option of just kicking her out at this point?
Well, unfortunately, no, because legally she has as much right to be there as you do. You would have to literally go into small claims court, sue her, and ask a judge to order her out, which is problematic. You certainly would need an attorney. I think that's unlikely.
Okay.
You're stuck with this rental. So what can happen? Well, let me give you a couple ideas. If you were to find a new tenant, you could replace, theoretically, the one that wasn't paying. If you could get her to move out, somebody new to move in and start to pay. Unfortunately, that has to be done with the permission of the landlord. And again, the landlord is unlikely to let the old tenant off. Why? They've got more insurance on getting the rent paid. They're always happy to add renters. They're rarely happy to let somebody go.
Is there any way to get somebody off a lease after the lease is signed? How complicated is that?
Well, there is, but it involves a new lease. And basically, you would go to the landlord and say, look, we've got a brand new situation here. The old one didn't work out. Here's my new roommate. He or she is going to apply to you. And if they meet your standards, we'd like to start over with a brand new lease, tear up the old one. It's no longer valid. But the bottom line is people just don't read their lease agreement. And when they don't, they get in trouble. And there's just not a whole lot that they can do about it at this point.
Well, I mean, the question I have is suppose that, how do you avoid this problem, I guess? Because a lot of people need a roommate situation in order to make ends meet and be able to live where they need to live. So what can you do to avoid this?
Well, the bottom line is you don't want to guarantee someone else's performance under the terms of the lease. Unfortunately, that's in every lease I've ever seen. You could theoretically negotiate that with the landlord, but I can speak on behalf of being a landlord. I would not accept that arrangement. If you and a roommate agree to rent my rental property, you're both responsible for the entire rental. So make sure if you have a roommate, it's somebody you can trust.
So I need to do a background check on my potential roommate, whoever this random female is, before I agree to signing this lease with her.
Don't sign with a random female, Buck. Find somebody you trust who's going to pay the bills, okay?
All right, good advice. John, thanks a lot. And if you have any questions about leases or anything related to real estate, John Adams will be hosting a live chat on the Fox 5 Facebook page.